Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Leap Day special conversation, the last one from our February series. Today, we will be talking about an amazing and amazingly timely topic, namely resilience, training the resilience muscle, and how we can cultivate resilience in the face of change. And with all the changes that we have been navigating, whether personally or professionally, it feels like we need resilience in the face of change, in the back of change, in the lateral of change. Change just happens all around us. My name is Minola Jacques. I will be your co host for the next hour. We have Jessa taking good care of us backstage, working her tech and logistics magic. And I would just want to welcome everybody in the audience. I start comments coming in, which is always a great sign that technology is working and we're not stuck in some loop in the World Wide Web. And I do want to encourage everybody to keep those comments coming. Do let us know where you're watching us from, where you're listening to us from, and help us travel the world vicariously through your comments and reading your locations. We have an amazing panel lineup. I will ask Jessa to help me bring them on stage. And while they settle in their boxes and get used to seeing their faces next to one another, I will continue to welcome everybody in the audience and wholeheartedly encourage all of you to consider the comments your own conversation space. Whatever it is that we're discussing with the panel, please keep your comments, your ideas, your own takes on the topic coming, and in this way we all learn from each other and grow the community. Now, enough of this intro blabathon, because hacking HR hours just feels so very short. And what I will do, I will kick us off with the very simple intro round of introduction. So I will pass the mic around as you appear on my screen, and I will ask you to firstly shortly introduce yourselves and also help me outline the conversation, and do share what is your own personal meaning attached to resilience. And it gives me so much joy to welcome first Stephanie. It's so good to see you.
It is so great to see you. It's so great to be here. And what an amazing topic to chat about as we wrap up the second month of the year. I'm Stephanie Lemick. I'm a former HR executive, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Wounded Workforce, an organization dedicated to building trauma-informed workplaces. So I am so thrilled to talk about this topic, especially because I think we have an interesting and maybe incorrect relationship with resilience as a term. And we think about resilience as grit and just kind of muscling through things that are hard. And when I think of my own personal definition of resilience, it's recognizing that part of the human experience is hardships and finding ways to move through that, including asking for and receiving help.
Mm. So happy to hear right off the bat the fact that we do have a tense relationship with resilience and with the meanings that people and organizations assign to it. Angela, welcome. So good to see you.
It is great to be here from beautiful Vancouver, British Columbia. I'm on the traditional unceded lands of the Coast Salish peoples. My name is Angela Champ, and I am an HR executive and also the author of a couple of books, including most recently, The Squiggly Line Career. I love the topic of resilience. To Stephanie's point, it isn't just about grit and muscling through. That's not what hopefully we're going to be talking about today. And I could go on and on about resilience because I see, particularly since COVID-19, I see that there's been more incidents of people feeling exhausted and burnt out. And I think this topic is so very needed and so very timely. Happy to be here today.
Thank you so very much. Jen, good to see you.
I want to know how you curated a panel of people who are all just cut from the same cloth. Not to say we're not going to have, I think, some pretty lively conversation, but I think the background that we're all coming from is that, you know, how we've been thinking about it needs to change. So I'm really excited to be here. I'm Jen Fox. I have been in a HR and learning development capacity for about 25 years. I have my own coaching and consulting practice, mother of 3, which I will say has been the ultimate resilience building training of my life. Props to all the parents out there. I'm calling in from Princeton, New Jersey today. And I think that I don't yet have it figured out into like a beautiful one line. What I know is that I'll echo Stephanie and Angela, what they've said so far. And I think for me, although in hindsight, I didn't recognize it at the time, I started to grapple with resilience when I self-published a children's book years ago, long before I had kids, and it was called It's Okay to Cry. And realizing that I strongly believe that the first step in building resilience is identifying where we're at and how we're feeling and leaning way, way, way into that, as opposed to the get back on the horse and get back to normal as soon as possible. Because you know why people tell us to do that? Because it makes them uncomfortable for us to be in a bad place. So we have a lot to say. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks.
Thank you so very much. Mai, it's a joy having you on this panel. Good to see you.
Likewise, likewise. I'm really excited to be here. Hello, everyone. Good day. My name is Mai Liu, and I'm calling in from San Francisco, California. I'm currently a people leader and an organizational psychologist, and this is a topic very near and dear to my heart. And really don't know if I had the language for it until I came into the professional workspace. And it's interesting because my relationship with resilience is something that's been of a lifelong journey. And I imagine all of us have had to have resilience somewhere in our lives. And so being able to use a word to describe the experience of not just surviving in life, but thriving through life and all the ups and downs, as Stephanie mentioned earlier, is just normalizing that experience of navigating those ups and those downs and being able to continue forward, being able to have the space to be sad, to be able to process grief, to process trauma, to process the tough things that are going on in life. And that's really been my experience with resilience, is over the years realizing what I was doing, what I was learning, what I was experiencing was resilience, being able to name it, and now being able to use that vocabulary and help others in my areas of passion in the people space. And really looking forward to continuing this conversation today. I can tell it's already going to be really fun.
Thank you so very much. And just making our panel complete and wholesome. Manisha, good to see you. It's been a while.
It's been a while. I try to do one every month with Enrique, but we'll try to do more. But very nice to meet you again, Manola. And seems like we have multiple authors. Jen, you mentioned, I think Angela, I've written a book too, writing one more. And definitely all of us, I think, do think alike. Maybe that's why we signed up for talking in this panel. I think for me, again, there's lots of ways of thinking about resilience. And I'm also a mother, so that definitely helped quite a bit to, in college daughters. I think the journey, if I have to bookend it, starts from being self-aware and adaptable, right? So if I'm aware of who I am and I am comfortable adapting without, shaming myself, feeling bad about certain things which did not go the right way, like it's okay. We are human beings, right? So there's lots of like, I mean, if you I'm a product manager, by the way. I'm a product leader in technology space, leading people analytics for Oracle. Was a business person, had big teams, and I felt like technology hasn't done enough to help leaders understand their teams better. So serendipitously, now I'm doing people analytics and people intelligence. But I am at a hardcore still a very people person, even though it's product and technology. So I would say, like, I think somewhere if we can instill confidence in people to care for themselves, right? Maybe provide them the clarity. Sometimes it's as simple as setting up right goals and knowing you cannot reach the moon today. It's okay, take the first step, and it's okay if you fall, because someone we will be there to help you out, right? So it's clarity, confidence, caring for yourself, and then maybe little celebrations. I would say sometimes because we are not clear on setting our goals and not really celebrating those small joys, we feel burnt out. And resilience is a very powerful, strong word. I will maybe, maybe tease the panel today to say sometimes we use it a little too much. Little things. I don't need to be resilient because I could not make a delivery today. Right, one Jira did not get done. It's okay. Like it's not such a big resilience is like something really crazy happened. I still dealt with it. So I hear a lot of my daughter's generation or Gen X like talking about big words for very little things, and I think that's losing the meaning a little bit for them. So I do want to be cautious about, please understand the meaning of the word before you start applying it everywhere. So we'll talk about it. Looking forward to the panel.
Well, absolute standing ovation for all the answers that you already brought into the conversation. And I was sitting here thinking that 1 hour for this topic is definitely not enough. This is a topic that if we just look at its meaning in our lives at the moment, I think there's a whole series worth of insights and stories to share. Now, before we move into the topic, and before I will ask the first question, I will preface it with a bit of a context, packaged as a personal share. I oftentimes say that serendipity is how the universe gives us a hug. So it's very serendipitous that we have this conversation now, because I was just invited to speak on a panel at my full-time job about resilience. And I was very open, very honest about it. And I did say that I have a very tense relationship with resilience, because on one hand, I can recognize and appreciate and embrace and try to grow into its meaning. But at the other hand, I do see organizations that use resilience as a very elegant word for suck it up, buttercup. And I believe that all of us on this panel and many people in the audience have a physical reaction to hearing, let's have a resilience workshop. And the quote that comes to my mind is something from Desmond Tutu that said, at one point we have to stop pulling people out of the river, and we have to go upstream and see why they fall in the first place. Now, long story short, my next question is, how does resilience show up in the workplace? And in what way, if any, is it different from resilience in our personal lives? And you all know by now, for some reason I go diagonally. So Jen, I will ask you to be the pioneer for this one. And then everybody, unmuting competition officially open. I hope you practiced. And please build your own conversation. So Jen, resilience in the workplace.
I have full body chills from when you just said that quote, because it's just, and I've heard it before, but I think in this context, and having spent the majority of my career inside organizations, it's just so true. And I think that we are getting so much wrong when it comes to organizational resilience. And what I think we get wrong is we kind of forget about the people. And that seems ridiculous because there is no resilience without the people. But when I look at how it shows up right now and what people believe about it in the workplace, resilience is ultimately how we adapt to change, right? How we adapt and respond to things that come our way. So I think in the work environment, and Manisha, really, such a great point about sort of overusing it and what are we even talking about, right? So I think when we're talking about organizations, and we can put sort of resilience and change management or change readiness kind of in the same, almost in the same bucket, the prevailing model around change management for 30 years has had the first step be create urgency. Well, where does that lead us to? According to McKinsey, they say 70% of organizational initiatives fail. That's because we're so urgent, we run around with our hair on fire. And then we fall down and we fail, and we're just like, okay, quick, what next? So it's like action, reaction, failure, reaction. What do we do? So I think fundamentally, we have to start putting the people back into change management and resilience in the organization. How do we do that? That leads to the second part of your question. Is it different from, professionally or personally? I don't think so, because at the core of it is just me. And how I show up, as much as, I can put on my professional persona and I can put on my mom hat at 4 o'clock today, it's just me. I'm one person. And those default behaviors that mostly go back to, I believe, our childhood programming, they're there with us whether we like it or not. I was personally raised very much to have it all together. I was fine. Angela, I'm Canadian too, and I do think that part of it is a cultural thing. Everything was fine. Don't rock the boat. Don't express your opinions. Don't color outside the lines. Keep everybody else comfortable. And to the point of, until that doesn't work, and then I snap, right? And all of those pent up feelings and emotions of the unexpressed me comes out in a very unproductive way. So, and I don't remember who said, maybe it was around like the importance of self-awareness. So this is so complex, but I think fundamentally, personal and professional, it's the same thing. I saw a question in the chat from Larissa. Can you teach resilience? I absolutely 100% believe you can teach resilience. It's not innate. You don't born with it. You're not born with it or not. But I do think that the very first thing we need to do in the workplace is to put our people back and have change management built around a people-centered focus.
First, I'd like to say how much I love that Canada is in the house. Thank you very much.
Yes.
But I'd love to build on what Jen said, because I found myself nodding my head. And to that point, while the circumstances around why you need to be resilient or how you show resilience may differ professionally than personally, the reality is we need to have it in both. And so we build resilient. When we talk about resilient organizations, we talk about organizations that have cash flow to keep the doors open. We talk about that the supply management is set up, that they've got the right people in place. So when we talk about organizations being resilient, in the business world, we talk about it all the time. We just don't usually say the word resilient, but that's what we mean when we say that an organization, to be a going concern, needs to have certain things in place. And similarly, in the workplace, as HR executives, part of our role is to make sure that we have a resilient workforce and that we create an environment where people can be resilient. And to the question that was in the comments, can you learn resilience? Yes. Or can you teach resilience? Yes, but you can also learn resilience. And so some of that, building resilience within an organization on the employee side, would look like making sure that the skills are up to date, not just for what you need right now, but where you see the organization going in 1 year and 5 years. So do they have the technology skills that they need? Do they have the people skills, the critical thinking skills that we need? Are we talking to people about career opportunities and what they can do to achieve those goals? Do we offer financial planning, financial literacy programs within our workplace to help people become financially resilient so that if there's a setback? So I do believe that it's similar in the working world as it is in the home life. In our home life, what does it mean to be resilient? Well, it could mean things like, do you have home insurance in case your house burns down, right? That's being resilient. And so there are a lot of overlaps. It's just that the actions may look a little bit different.
I have like a hot take, maybe. I don't know. I might make people mad. I'm okay with it. I'm resilient. See what I did there? I don't like talking about organizations as resilient. I think, to Manisha's point, when we use words too much or use them in different ways in different contexts, we dilute their meanings. And when I think about resilience, I think about something very personal. And I think about something that is growing with us as we grow through our journey of life. And, some points that Angela and Jen both made that I thought were very important and poignant. When we talk about resilient organizations, we're kind of talking about the survival of an organization. We're talking about, is this viable? Is this the same? And it kind of feels icky when we think about that for an individual. Resilience is how you continue to grow and develop throughout your life. I prefer to talk about when we think about individual resilience, and like Jen said, bringing people, bringing humanity back into change and back into how we think through organizational initiatives. I prefer to for organizations to think about a concept that I use as part of trauma informed workplaces: humility and responsiveness, in understanding that no one gets it right all the time. Organizations don't get it right all the time. And then how do we correct to continue to survive, to continue to do better for our customers, our communities, our employees? And to me, that's a better fit for a resilient organization. And then when we think about resilience as an individual, I do think our resilience shows up for us personally wherever we are, whether it's at work or personal. And those experiences build on each other. Like Jen said, I think it's very personal, though. It's an individual journey towards resilience and kind of creating a growth mindset around that resilience. I also think, like, ring the alarm bell, wave the red flag if you hear be more resilient from your managers, your leaders, because I think, again, that is a misuse of the term. And it really means work harder, because we aren't going to leverage this humility and responsiveness to acknowledge the way we're working isn't working for our team.
Mm.
I love the interesting take, Stephanie. And so, okay, maybe I'll just share the way I think about it. And I'm taking some notes to see if I need to change my way of thinking. But the fact is, organizational resilience has become a term, and it's a debate that does happen, right? So we have to find the right way of addressing it. And I'm a back to basics person in almost everything I do. So I'll go back to, we always, it's been a saying for a long time, multiple decades: people, process, technology make an org. Okay. So now if I have to talk about resilient org, then I'll talk again in terms of people, process, technology. And as a leader of the org, you have to think very different. So to Jen, your point, I think oftentimes we forget or kind of dilute the people part or mix it up with the process parts of it. So, I mean, the process was messed up when we did not have accountability in the process, right? So you allowed me to set up goals which are not aligned with each other. And now, oh my God, ninth hour has struck and we are not, on track. So yes, the head was on fire. Why was the process not resilient? And why are the people paying for it? So I would say, like, I think in terms of like breaking it down. So from a people perspective, as a leader, what I could do to provide an environment where people can become resilient. I can't mandate, please be resilient. I mean, that doesn't work exactly ever. Even for me, it wouldn't work if somebody asked me to like demand. But what they can do is provide an environment which is conducive enough for me to choose to be resilient and become resilient, right? So do you understand me? Like, as a leader, if I understand who's working for me, who's in my team, if I provide environment where they can be in a job that they want to do, and not decide for them what their growth is. Maybe I have a family, I don't really want to be growing fast this year, whatever it is. So allow me to do what I want to do. Don't choose for me, don't mandate for me, but provide those environments, right? If I am on the growth curve, provide me opportunities to grow, connect me with the right folks. And that environment, it's almost like you provide the soil for people to be choosing to be resilient the way they define resilience for themselves, right? So and similarly, then what I can be more resilient about within an org is ensuring that the technology is resilient. It is set up and will scale with you as you grow. Otherwise, what happens is, whenever things go wrong, we fall back on our people. When we plan for technology, we plan for processes, but whenever shit happens, it's always like, oh guys, 5 people in the room, just figure it out. And then we are like, oh my God, suck it up. To your earlier point, by the way, Milona, I love the way you term things. I don't know what you said. What did you say? I have a tough relationship with resilience, something like that. Tension with resilience. Yeah, I mean, you create tension with the word because now shit has happened. Now process cannot fix itself in 5 days. Technology cannot, but people will. right? So I would separate, if we are the leaders, think of it from a people versus technology. Don't demand it from people and let them choose what they want to do.
Mm.
The only thing that I would add, because these, yes, double check plus 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 on everyone's answers so far, and I don't want to repeat any of the brilliance that has already been repeated or already been stated. The only thing that I would add from an organizational perspective is that as people leaders, as leaders in your organizations, we have a unique power position and a responsibility to help our fellow leaders help to create culture that is sustainable and an environment, to Manisha's point, that can allow for resilience to be more prevalent. So what I mean by that is when we use the term resilience, or you hear leaders use the term resilience, asking the question why. What's the purpose of having this resilience being put on the organization? What do you mean by resilience? What's the outcome we're trying to achieve? If the answer has anything to do with performance or high performance, that's a red flag right there. So that is something that we can do as leaders in our organizations to help unpack that. Okay, let's talk about resilience when you're using that term in the space of performance. How is that? Tell me what the relationship here, and helping to educate our leadership on using that terminology and the way that is actually, to everyone's point, the actual true meaning and how the outcome is really aligned to individuals being able to thrive in the organizations, to be able to have the space to recover and rest and recharge and reflect. So going through and unpacking all of the whys and really going to the outcomes that are really the ways that resilience can really be effective, I guess I would say, but using in a way that's not related to performance, which just happens to be a byproduct of a culture that has resilience. It's not the purpose of why resilience exists in an organization.
Angela, I see you unmuted. Please jump back in.
I just want to thank you. I do want to jump in and say we've had a few comments about resilience equating with performance or with productivity, but I think it was Jen that said, resilience is how we adapt and respond to change. And I want to take us back to, for me, resilience means exactly that. How do you respond to setbacks, personal and professional? How do you make sure that you're not just surviving through it, but thriving through it? And for me, a lot of it is around readiness and preparedness. And what I mean by that is setbacks happen. I consider myself to be an extremely resilient person, but I've had tons of setbacks, personally and professionally. I've had a divorce, I've lost jobs, I've moved cities, I've lost a parent, I've had death in my family. So I have the normal setbacks that lots of human beings have, but yet I consider myself a very resilient person. And so for me, I don't equate resilience with productivity or with performance. I consider it with, in the face of change, in the face of setbacks, can you draw on resources that are available to you to help you thrive? And that might be an employee assistance program. Could it be your community? Could it be your best friend? Could it be your network? Could it be going back to school? So what are the resources that you can draw on to help you thrive and not just survive? So I just wanted to say that to me, I never really equate it with performance and productivity in an organization.
Angela, I have to say, Angela hit the perfect thing we have to talk about with resilience. We talk about resilience, but how do you build resilience? You can, and you do throughout your life. You build resilience most directly by dealing with challenges and setbacks. You can't build resilience without overcoming challenges and obstacles. So when we talk about, building resilience, trainings around resilience, yes, there are skills we can learn to help us build that. But really, resilience comes from, someone in a training said this the other day, and I love it. I'm stealing it. Dealing with all the BS we all deal with as part of our lives. That's really where resilience comes into play. And I'm so glad you said that, Angela, because it's such an important part of our conversation.
Yeah. Jen, I see you unmuted.
Yeah, I don't want to lose that thread because when I was thinking about, I love the title of this session, right? Training the resilience muscle. I always go to the, very like, how do I do it? Right? If I go to the gym, I want to know what are the reps? What do I need to do? And one of the things that I think we can do as an organization to help people build that muscle is to normalize those setbacks and create the space for them. Stephanie and I had a conversation earlier this week, and one of the things that I shared is I said, I think so many companies, you hear from leadership, or we spend the time at the all hands giving the awards and talking about what did we ship, what's out the door, what are the lists that we got on, all of the bells and whistles. Well, where are we making space to share openly? This just flopped. This failed. We thought this and it went that way. And I think that it's a small but gigantic step that we could take in terms of internal communications and creating the culture where it's not just about, it's not like talking about setbacks with like an arm's distance, right? It's not, oh, this happened to me 20 years ago and now I've like came through it and I've climbed all the mountains. But getting comfortable and creating the environment where we're like I don't have no idea who used the term the messy middle, but I think it just fits. When we're in it and we're going through it, can we create the space for people to show up and actually talk about it? It sucks, right? That part of it. So I think exactly, Stephanie, what you're saying, that we can build the skills, and certainly there's so many tools and things like that, but it's getting comfortable with speaking and hearing other people be uncomfortable and not jumping in with the band-aid solutions, right away. That's where the real life muscle building actually happens, not the head. I know how to deal with it, but that sort of that muscle that we have that we can draw on the next time something, the shit hits the fan, as Manisha so eloquently said earlier. So
Well, believe it or not, we're right in the middle of our conversation, and I keep saying that one of the best irrefutable signs that it's a great conversation is when facilitator is not needed. I loved sitting here and enjoying this. I do want, first and foremost, anticipate questions from the audience. Yes, this conversation is being recorded. So if at any moment in time you want to go back and re-listen, or you want to recommend it, you can do so either from our LinkedIn space or from hackinghrlab.io. Now, while I was sitting here, I was reminded something that I oftentimes use in doing change work, and it comes courtesy of Winston Churchill. And he said that success is going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm. And to some degree, this is also about resilience. And I do want to further harness this energy around talking about how we deal with failures in organizations, how oftentimes we completely mispurpose agile and the principles of retrospectives, of how we talk a lot about psychological safety, and very, very rarely I see psychological safety linked to resilience in organizational conversations. So this is something that I would invite all of us to go a little bit deeper. How can we repurpose and rebuild and re-energize organizations as true mirrors of what is going on? And I would love a spin. You cannot dangle a conversation about the meaning and the power of words in front of a journalist. So you had me at the power of words. Manisha, I will ask you, because I saw you unmuted there for a second. I would ask you to start us off on this one. And how can we use the power of words and different mindsets and different skill sets to drive different quality conversations?
I would say, Manona, I think the context matters a lot when we talk about these things. So if you're in the leadership room, the discussions that happen versus in a team room versus, at an IC level, we have to be a little bit more mindful. And I will go back to Jen. I think somewhere this notion of people and people have a heart and a soul and some psychology, like we're not machines, sometimes gets lost in that Excel of numbers, right? And that's where I think a lot of these challenges happen. So I do believe in root cause analysis. Shit has happened. Why did it happen? But the question is, and we will go through the activity of discussing it. But unless there is candor in the room, it's just an activity. But if there is candor, we are growing. We are really debating to seek the truth without fear of whose problem is it. It is, I mean, and I think one thing I would say, I very strongly believe the tone of an organization is set at the top. The culture permeates very strongly. You can make some bottoms up changes, but until the top leader is convinced, things take a lot longer. And there's a lot more, I would say, incentives, and sometimes not the right incentives for people to play the game. So, but if the tone is set at the top, then it would be, we only celebrate joint successes. We don't celebrate individual successes. I think, Jen, you made a good point there. Like, yeah, we made 3 deals, we lost 2 deals. Overall, the company is doing fine. And by the way, whatever deals we lost, they actually helped us close the next deal because we learned a lot from our mistakes. Instead of the hero worships that happen, honestly, we kind of sometimes promote one hero, and we create a lot of unfortunate jealousy at the ground level, a lot more, which creates the culture we don't want to. So if we can be like, I mean, and by the way, like Stephanie, like I also question a lot of the norms quite a bit, and I think we need to, right? So a lot of our org structures and our policies, the way we think about organizations, were created about 120, 150 years back in the industrial revolution, when you have this pyramid structure and information has to flow. Today it's an influence game, right? So do I have network analysis on identifying the right actual communicators within my organization, the real leaders in the organization? We don't create org structures that way still. So we go through the hierarchy. Hierarchy means information may or not flow accurately across everybody. Obviously there will be a lot of things which will go wrong, right? And then in the end, everything boils down to you are not being resilient, you're not being performing. The fact is, again, the process is not there. So are we willing to change the way we think about organizations? Are we willing to change the way we think about leaders? Are we willing to look at success differently and not heroship, but we sail or we lose together, right? And we sail or we lose together means a lot of checkpoints also have to happen, right? So you have to give incentives for everybody. I can talk tools like RACI is a powerful tool. Are we clear on roles and responsibilities on who was supposed to do what? And do we have a coaching eye in case the things did not go wrong? And it's not just again an activity. Like I think the candor, the trust is key. I can do a lot of this from an active. We did a RACI, we did an root cause analysis, but nobody was listening, nobody was talking, nobody had the courage to really bring up things to the front. Why? Because if I am a loser, I will get dinged on the bonus. Versus no, together, if we take the next deal together, it's it's like a service I'm doing by sharing the things that I messed up, because next time the team will win together. Right. So I did start something. I would still say it's not fully, I'm not at a point where I'm able to send the signal strongly at the my leadership level. But if somebody is able to solve a problem before it becomes a problem, we celebrate that, right? And normally what happens is you create a problem, then you solve the problem, then you go discuss that problem with the leadership, you get recognized, right? If somebody behind the scenes worked crazy hours or was very meticulous in finding the right solution, did not even make it a problem, we forget about it. It's cool. I mean, there was no big deal, right? So what's the problem? Look, it was about to become a big deal. The earthquake was about to happen, but the person was holding the earth so tight that it did not happen. Like, please go and give that person a hug for not shaking the world, right?
Yeah.
These are silent heroes within the organization. But again, only a manager, only a leader can identify these skills, because they're not tracked in. There's no bug that was created. There was no problem that was reported. So I think the leadership onus has to be in enabling people to become who they are, staying who they are, and helping them become adaptable. But,
I see. I see a lot of nodding on the screen. And Mai, I see you unmuted, and then Stephanie, I saw you unmuted a few seconds ago. So Mai.
Sure. So I love the question around how do we build resilience in the workplace, and how do we maintain the energy as we go through changes in the organization. So the answer that I was thinking about, kind of building off everything that Manisha shared, I would say is like thinking about an organization as it's really a collective of people together. And so thinking about it at an individual person level, as Jen's talked about earlier, we want to think about organizations as a collective of people. Organization is really a construct. It's not a physical thing. It's just a collective of people that are brought together based on a core set of values. And so thinking about the concept of resilience at an individual level and at an organizational level, um, from an individual level, there are acknowledgments around who is the decision maker in the room. So if someone is an employee that doesn't have access to directly changing policy, they can share their feedback, they can share their perspective with their manager, their supervisor, and make sure that their needs are known. They can share about how work is going or how it's not going, or being able to share the experience of these are the things that I'm struggling with. This is the areas that I need help with. These are the areas that I don't have access to resources. To Angela's point, what do I need to be able to do my job, and also include rest and time off? Maybe I'm not meeting my goals. So there's an individual component at an employee level of sharing with your manager and building that trust with that person, hopefully if they're a good leader, so that you can get the access to the resources and needs that you need to be successful. From an organizational perspective, this is where those that are in positions of power, so if you have a title that is leader in your title, or if you have manager in your title, or if you have HR or people in your title, or culture in your title, we are uniquely positioned to be able to influence change because we have that seat at the table and we are a partner to the business. And so when we build tools of resilience, we can think about the processes that enable change to happen. So at the end of the day, people go to a job because they are paid for it. They are paid for it and they earn income from it. And there are multiple other reasons why people stay employed. That's a whole other reason. That's a whole other topic about why people stay at the work that they do. But at the end of the day, they're going to be paid some sort of income for their work. And so if the processes and the policies and reward systems don't align to creating cultures of resilience. So as Manisha said, are we rewarding people who fail, and that we're able to learn from those failures, and are those being shared, and are those recognized? Are they financially compensated? Are there milestones? Are there celebrations around those experiences? Is there time set aside to have these things? Or are project timelines and delivery points, are they constantly set up to continue go, go, go? And there's not those troughs to recover. There's not those troughs to reflect and pause. And by the way, change takes time. So to Jen's point earlier, was the urgency so fast that we didn't allow reflection and for our people to get on board to be like, oh yeah, I do need to go through this change, and let them go through that process, which takes time. I like to say that the most important resource in our lives is time, because you can't get more of it, and what we have is finite. Like, we're all going to die one day. Like, spoiler alert. So the ability to have time to reflect, to take the time off, whether it's PTO, whether it's time to access mental health resources, all those different things are factors that help contribute to an organization to foster resilience. The last thing I would say is communications. When it comes to communications, those can be very effective in helping to address people as they move along the change curve. So each of us individually, as we go through change, it's kind of like grief, and then anger, and then you go through like acceptance. And so there's actually physical, psychological emotions. It's a roller coaster that we go through as we navigate change. Just think about any sort of change you've gone through in your personal life. You went through this like, oh, I hate this, I'm loving this, no, I'm not, I want to go back, I love, and you jump and pivot between those emotions. So our communications as leaders need to align with where people are on those change curves and enabling leadership and managers to help their staff on how to navigate through those curves as well too. So those would be how I would say organizationally and individually.
Thank you, Mai. Stephanie.
Obviously we're talking a lot about resilience because, well, this is a discussion on resilience, but I think it's important to think about when we are creating organizational culture, when we're focusing on traits of an organizational culture, who really wants to be part of an organization or a team where we're focused on resilience as like the main goal? Because yes, of course, we need to leverage resilience, but I think there are other things that resilience is in partnership with. And we're not just like, if you think about leaders who are only relying on resilience, or you're only relying on your resilience to get through something, you're going to burn out eventually. I love what Mai said about you need that time to reflect and come back. And so I think that's where things like psychological safety, as you mentioned, Manola, come into play. Is let's focus on psychological safety. Let's focus on vulnerability. So our leaders, so our team members are raising their hand when they need that extra support. And that's really resilience, both at an individual, and I know I said I didn't like it, but at the organizational level too, because we're able to pull in those things and provide supports and move through the challenges successfully. If we're just challenge after challenge after challenge, like white knuckling it, I think we're getting back to that definition of resilience that's misused.
Jen.
My head wants to explode with so much going through from you. I've got a lot of notes, and just you're prompting me to think about a lot of things. And thanks for all the comments. I don't know if there's going to be a way we can jump on all the questions in the comments. So when we think about, it kind of goes back to your question around language and the tools and some of the practical things. When you look at what's in place right now, whether it's an agile retrospective, a post-project Kaizen, a lessons learned, name the framework. None of them were created for people. None of them. They were created to look at, we launched a product or a whatever, what worked, what didn't, go, 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 go. And then you look at all the diagrams, they're like quick cycles, right? How many people have heard fail fast in the last 2 years? Seriously? So when I think about that again, it just comes back to that thing that we've lost the people. And I had a really profound experience personally that we don't have time to get into right now. But I got on a plane last June, and in one plane ride to Canada, Angela, I'll keep plugging us. I created a model. I call it the Bounce Back Blueprint, and it is for individuals, and it starts and the language is entirely different. The first step is I am. Where am I right now? I feel. I recognize. What could I do? I could, I will, and I need. There's 6 steps, and it's all centered around me. And it flowed out of me because it was so clear to me after 25 years inside and outside of organizations and supporting people in like a human resources capacity that we've just lost track of the people. It's just go, 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 go. And as we've all said, you put a bunch of people in a room and then you've got a team. Well, that does not make for resilient teams. It makes for a disastrous combination of people who don't have resilience at the individual level. So, and I'm shamelessly plugging here because tomorrow I'm launching in partnership with Film Forward the organizational model around this, which is the same framework. Where are we located as a team? What are we feeling? What's going on here? What do we recognize? This sounds familiar. We keep coming back to the same place like every 3 months, right? What are we missing? And then we get on to problems and solutions. But the typical, what the corporate environment especially fosters is result, action, result, action. And it's this whiplash thing. Stephanie, you said it, right? We don't allow the space at all. Mai, you said it. We don't allow the pause, the time off, or anything else. It's just go, go, go. So I think one of the first things we can do is just stop and look at what are the tools out there right now that we are completely misusing for this purpose. They are meant to fix a process. They are not meant to help people become more resilient people. Yes, Yolanda, that's the name. Trademark pending. So
yeah.
Watch my LinkedIn.
Angela.
Oh my gosh, I love what Jen and Stephanie and I've taken a page full of notes already. I wanted to add, the subtitle of this panel is cultivating resilience in the face of change. Excuse me. And one thing I've noticed is that when change happens in an organization or to a person, people are surprised. Oh no, this has changed. We're introducing a new product, a new process, a technology. We've lost some people. We've gained some people. People seem surprised. And when I coach folks, I often talk about change readiness. Start with the assumption change will happen. And then wherever you are in your professional personal life, make a list or think about what could that change be? Will there be a new process? Will you have more responsibility, less responsibility? Will there be new technology introduced? Will you lose a coworker? Will you gain a coworker and the team dynamic changes? And then think about preparedness, individual preparedness. What can you do for yourself to help you prepare, knowing that change will come? Don't be surprised by change. Change happens daily, all the time, personally and professionally, but people are caught by surprise. And this is where the setback happens. And then where we're kind of caught off guard. But I don't know if this is like Girl Guides or who says this, but expect the best, but prepare for the worst. So is your resume up to date? Are you keeping your skills up to date? Are you nurturing your network? Are you paying attention to what's happening in the world, in the news, in your industry? Make sure that you're taking those actions in order to create preparedness so that you can be resilient. And to Stephanie's point a few minutes ago, experiencing a setback or something that requires you to be resilient doesn't mean that you're not going to grieve. You could still grieve about it. You can still be angry about it. You can still be sad about it. You can still be ecstatic about it, depending on what it is. And then where do you draw those resources? What are those resources that you need? What's that foundation that you built that you can create that setback? And rest might be one of them. I wanted to add that as a point.
I love everything that is being said, and just building a little bit on this round of answers. The questions that I get most often in my change work, in my everyday change work, is why are we changing again? And is this the last change? And when is this change going to stop? And I tell people two things. First, try to think about change as if it were an electrocardiogram, where ups and downs are okay, the flat line is not so okay. So don't aspire to flatline. And the other one is to tell people, especially leaders, that we misspeak about change, and we still sell change as a process to get from here to there, selling the embedded promise that there is going to be stable and sustainable. We're still selling change as a destination and not as a journey. And I do believe that this miscontracts resilience expectations. Now, what I learned on my journey, my favorite definition of resilience is that it's not about bouncing back, but it's about bouncing forward. So on my journey to bouncing forward, I learned that we teach resilience as it is all about doing. But what I personally found, either in my life or in my work, is that it's more about who I have been becoming and what is my sense of purpose and what do I stand for and how do I set boundaries. So I would like to open the last about 6 minutes. I do want some time aside for the wrap up mic drop round. What is one thing about resilience that we either touched and you want to highlight or build on? Or what is one very particular slice of this topic that you want to leave the audience with? So consider this an open mic round. And Stephanie, I see you unmuted. Please go.
I'm practicing my unmuting skills. I think the one thing I would say that we haven't hit on, or we've only like glanced at with resilience, is when you're in resilience, when you're leveraging resilience, it probably doesn't feel very good. I think we talk about resilience as this thing, this mighty, powerful, amazing skill, and it is, but it feels pretty shitty sometimes when you have to dive in and leverage that resilience. So I just want folks to know that if you're like, wow, crap, this has been a hard first couple of months of the year, same right here. It feels hard, it feels challenging, but like Manola said, that moving forward, that process of who we're becoming and being on that journey is powerful. And recognizing, it feels crappy, that's okay. You're still being resilient and know that that's the case.
I love that. Jen.
Manola, you get the like prize of the day if we're giving one out for the EKG thing. So powerful, so powerful. That's gonna stick with me. Yeah, I guess what I would want to leave people with is two thoughts. Kind of goes back to the comments. Yes, you can build it. Yes, it takes work. Stephanie, to your point, yes, it's not fun most of the time. And I think the other thing we haven't really touched on, although we've been talking about teams and organizations, resilience building is a very personal thing. And my entire life, I have been a like go it alone kind of gal. Just, truth be told, somewhere in me, I believe I can do it better, faster, cheaper, and better. Did I say better? By myself. And it has only been in the last several years where I've had some really profound experiences where I realized it's so much easier with other people. So it's not something you have to build on your own. Find your trusted people. I guarantee you no one has it all together. No matter what their LinkedIn profile says, they don't. And even the people who say I'm really resilient, there's always more and more and more to discover. So find your people and build it with someone else.
I love that so much. And I am a person that describes myself as very resilient. And I think that one of the reasons why I'm resilient, to Jen's point, is because I do reach out and connect with other people. I draw on my network, I draw on my community, make sure that I have a community around that. And that's really important. And the point that I wanted to make is the majority of the people on this call are in human resources or involved in human resources in some ways. And so we have a double responsibility. One is to help the people in our organizations or the organizations we support be resilient, feel resilient, and we need to feel resilient ourselves. And I'm hearing a lot of human resources people are feeling exhausted, they're feeling burnt out. Again, a little bit of a hangover from COVID-19 and what we were drawn on, but also because there's been a lot of layoffs, there's been a lot of movement, and so we've been busy with work that impacts other human beings, and that impacts our own resilience and our own fatigue. And so I would say to those human resources professionals who are feeling burnt out themselves, make sure that you're making a list and you know what resources you can draw on in order to become or stay resilient in the face. And to Jen's point, building that community and having other people around and tapping them on the shoulder is definitely a great way to do that.
I
guess the last thought I would like to leave the group is that being resilient is an act of bravery. So some people I think we use the term psychological safety in our discussion today. And my reframe would be, do we make spaces and make time for ourselves to have psychological bravery? So being able to be vulnerable, being able to share feelings and how we're going through the shitty feelings, as Stephanie shared, because it feels really icky, and normalizing that and having the bravery to share that with other people is actually an act of courage. And so my hope is that we continue to be brave in the world that's going to continue to change. We work with leaders who model bravery and share the things that are going on with them and how they are going through that experience. And so we can bond and connect as humans together. And that will help us feel more resilient at work because we're modeling it and sharing with others. But I would say resilience is an act of courage and bravery, and I hope that we can all continue to be brave together.
Manisha.
I need to learn from Stephanie to unmute, I guess. And I think building resilience and a lot of these traits, honestly, beyond resilience also, is a journey of self-discovery and self-evolution, which we embark upon with others, right? And try doing it yourself. You're not going to get all the challenges and all those situations we talked about where we understand who we really are and we understand how we prevail and we sail. But it is a very personal journey. Many of us have said that. And I do think words matter quite a bit. We talked about it in the beginning. So just watching your own emotions while you're in the midst of it, feeling shitty or feeling happy, but how are you feeling? What words are you describing for your own emotions? How you are sometimes labeling the emotions and the expressions of other people, especially you're in a leadership role. That matters a lot, right? So, again, it's not change management, it's not performance, it's not grit. It's just being able to become you, like the way you said, Melona. Really know you, become you, evolve yourself, adapt, thrive. All the words we talked about, none of them had performance or change management, right? But so I do think words matter. The psychological effect of words really has a much deeper impression than we sometimes realize. So again, if somebody says the wrong word, ignore that. Just watch your own emotion and evolve.
Thank you so very much, everyone. And I must say that I had no idea what the last mic drop round would be, but you inspired me. And you actually made me realize from a few years ago, I have my own personal mantra. I don't want to call it affirmation, but my own personal mantra is be present over perfect. And I say this to myself in the morning. You as panelists, I put it in my messages to you before every conversation. And I sometimes say to myself before I go into interactions with other people. And I never realized how much resilience was actually embedded in being present over perfect. So my last challenge for the day to each one of you is, can you leave our audience with a mantra for their resilience practice and their resilience muscle? And I will give you a few seconds to think about it. And in the meantime, I will say a very warm, wholehearted thank you to everybody being here, taking the time either now or later on the recording. A big thank you to Jessa for keeping us safe with everything on the technical side. And when you're ready to go, we will do this counterclockwise from where we started. So, Manisha, ready to go? A mantra.
How about words matter?
Thank you. Mai.
You are enough.
Wow. Jen.
Your job will never love you back.
Angela.
Expect the best, but prepare for the worst.
And Stephanie.
Practice self-acceptance.
Stephanie, Angela, Jen, Mai, and Manisha. This was an absolute gift. I think it's not a coincidence that we had this amazing conversation on a leap day, because it definitely feels like something extraordinary. Thank you for being here, for taking the time and the vulnerability and the energy. And thank you, everybody, for being here. Have a wonderful month of March ahead. And I hope I will get to welcome as many of you on screen and in the comments.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.